never thought I would be the kind of person who could cheat. I used to judge people like that. I used to say things like, if you're unhappy, just leave. I believed cheating was for weak people who didn't know what they wanted. That was before I became one of them. My partner trusted me completely. That was the worst part. There were no locked phones, no suspicious questions, no checking my location. He believed love meant faith, and I took advantage of that belief more times than I can count. Sometimes I look back and wonder if it would have been easier if he had suspected something, but he never did. Not once. The first time it happened, it didn't feel like cheating. At least, that's what I told myself. It started small, like most bad things do. A conversation that lasted too long. A look that stayed a second longer than it should have. A message that made my heart beat faster in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself I deserved to feel wanted. At home, everything was calm. Too calm. My partner was kind, predictable, safe. He asked about my day, made plans for the future, talked about things like vacations and savings. He loved me in a steady way. But somewhere along the line, steady started to feel invisible. I didn't feel exciting anymore. I didn't feel desired. I felt known in a way that made me feel boring. So when someone new paid attention to me, it felt like oxygen, like waking up after being asleep for years. That first time, it happened fast, faster than I expected. A drink turned into two, laughing turned into touching. Touching turned into something I knew I would regret later, but didn't stop. I remember thinking, just this once, just this moment. I'll never do it again. When I got home that night, my partner was already asleep. I stood in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, trying to recognize myself. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I felt calm. That scared me more than guilt ever could. About 10% into the story, let me say this clearly. If you find the story good, please like and subscribe our channel. It's free for you, but helps us a lot to keep sharing real stories like this. The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed him goodbye. I texted him heart emojis. I told myself that if I could act normal, then maybe it really didn't matter. Maybe cheating only counted if it changed something. And since nothing changed, maybe it didn't count. That lie became the foundation for everything that followed. The second time was easier. That shocked me. There was no shaking hands, no racing thoughts, just opportunity and choice. I told myself the first time was a mistake, but the second time was a decision. And once I crossed that line, something inside me shifted. I stopped seeing cheating as a single event. It became something flexible, something I could explain away. Sometimes it was physical. Sometimes it was emotional. Sometimes it was just messages that crossed lines I pretended didn't exist. Every time, I promised myself it would be the last. It never was. I learned how to lie without thinking. I learned which details to share and which to hide. I learned how to look someone in the eyes and tell them I loved them, while carrying secrets they never asked for. I learned how to separate parts of myself, like different rooms in the same house, locking the doors so they would never meet. My partner never changed. He never became distant or cruel. He never gave me a reason to justify what I was doing. In fact, the more he trusted me, the easier it became to betray him. That's something I still struggle to admit. Sometimes, after cheating, I would come home and feel extra affectionate. I would cook his favorite meals, plan date nights, talk about our future. It was like I was trying to balance the scale, as if good behavior could cancel out bad choices. Deep down, I knew that wasn't how it worked. The attention I got outside the relationship became addictive. Every new person saw me differently. To them, I was exciting, mysterious, desirable. They didn't know my flaws, my habits, my quiet routines. They only saw what I showed them. And I liked that version of myself more than the real one. Over time, the numbers stopped mattering. I honestly can't count how many times it happened. Some faces blurred together. Some names I forgot completely. What stayed the same was the feeling afterward. Not guilt, but emptiness. A hollow space that never stayed full for long. I started to wonder what was wrong with me. I wasn't unhappy enough to leave, but I wasn't fulfilled enough to stay faithful. I lived in that middle space, using other people to fill something I couldn't name. There were close calls, moments where I thought I was caught, a message seen at the wrong angle, a question asked with just a bit too much curiosity. Every time, my heart would stop, and every time, I talked my way out of it. My partner believed me because he wanted to, because love, when it's real, doesn't look for cracks. Each escape made me bolder, less careful, less afraid. By the end of that first year, cheating wasn't something that happened anymore. It was something that existed quietly alongside my relationship, like a shadow that followed me everywhere. I told myself I was in control. I told myself I could stop any time. I didn't realize yet that control was the first thing I had already lost. After a while, cheating stopped feeling like a secret and started feeling like a habit. Not something I planned, not something I scheduled, but something that existed in the background of my life, always waiting for the right moment. I didn't wake up thinking, I'm going to cheat today. It just happened when the opportunity showed up, and I stopped saying no. What scared me wasn't how often it happened. It was how normal it felt afterward. I still went to work. I still laughed at dumb jokes. I still laid next to my partner at night and talked about small things, like what we'd eat for dinner or which show we'd watch next. From the outside, nothing looked broken. Inside, I felt split into two versions of myself that never touched. One version was loyal, caring, responsible. That version paid bills, remembered birthdays, checked in when my partner was stressed. The other version wanted attention in a way that felt desperate. That version wanted to be seen as new again, wanted someone to look at me like I was a secret, not a routine. At first, I kept things separate. Different places, different people, different times. I told myself I was being careful. I deleted messages, avoided patterns, made sure nothing crossed paths. It felt like I was managing two lives, and somehow, I was good at it. Too good. The people I cheated with didn't know about each other, and most of them didn't know about my partner. When they asked, I avoided the truth. I said I was seeing someone casually, or not in anything serious. Every lie made the next one easier. Sometimes, I would look at my partner and feel a sudden wave of sadness. Not because I missed him, but because I knew I was stealing something from him without his consent. He believed in us. He believed in me. And I let him live in that belief while I stepped outside it again and again. There were moments when I almost confessed. Late at night, when he fell asleep first and the room was quiet. When I'd stare at the ceiling and imagine what would happen if I told the truth. I imagined the shock on his face, the confusion, the hurt. I imagined him asking questions I couldn't answer. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't you just leave? How long has this been going on? I never practiced my answers because deep down, I knew there were none that would make sense. Instead of confessing, I doubled down on pretending. I became better at acting like the perfect partner. I planned trips, I initiated intimacy, I said I love you more often. Part of me hoped that if I played the role well enough, it would become true again. But the more I tried to feel whole inside the relationship, the more restless I became outside of it. Cheating stopped being about excitement and started being about escape. Escape from routine. Escape from being fully known. Escape from myself. I noticed that I was drawn to people who didn't ask questions. People who wanted moments, not futures. One-night stands turned into repeat encounters. Repeat encounters turned into emotional connections I didn't expect. I told myself emotions were dangerous, but I ignored that rule more than once. I found myself waiting for messages, rereading conversations, feeling disappointed when someone didn't respond fast enough. That's when I realized I wasn't just risking my relationship, I was risking control. There was one person in particular who stayed longer than the rest, not because they were special, but because they saw me in a way that felt comforting. They didn't demand explanations, they didn't want promises. They just wanted me, as I was, in stolen moments. With them, the lines blurred even more. I shared pieces of my life I never shared with anyone else. I talked about my fears, my insecurities, the emptiness I couldn't explain. They listened without judgment, and I told myself that made it different. It wasn't different. It was just deeper. The deeper it got, the sloppier I became. I checked my phone more often. I smiled at messages without realizing it. I became distracted during conversations with my partner. Once, he asked if everything was okay, and I felt my stomach drop. Not because he knew, but because he noticed something had changed. I blamed stress, work, life. He accepted the answer without hesitation. That trust felt heavier than anger ever could. There were nights when I lay next to him, listening to his breathing, and wondered how someone could be so close and so far away at the same time. I wondered if I even knew who I was anymore. The version of me he loved felt like a character I was playing. And yet, I didn't stop. Every time I told myself I would, something pulled me back. A message, a memory, a feeling that being wanted somewhere else made me feel alive. I hated that part of myself, but I also fed it. I started to believe that as long as he didn't know, the damage wasn't real. That the truth only mattered if it was spoken out loud. I convinced myself that secrets only hurt when they were revealed. I didn't understand yet that secrets change you even when no one else sees them. By this point, cheating wasn't something I did during weak moments. It was something I justified during strong ones. I told myself I was smart enough to handle it, that I knew where the line was, that I wouldn't let it destroy anything important. Looking back now, that was the lie that did the most damage. Because once you believe you're in control, you stop noticing how fast you're actually falling. And I was already falling towards something I couldn't undo. By the time I reached what I thought was the middle of all this, I wasn't counting mistakes anymore. I was counting close calls. The number of times I almost got caught started to scare me more than the cheating itself. And yet, instead of slowing down, I kept going, as if I was testing how far I could push my luck. The first real scare happened on an ordinary evening. My partner asked to use my phone because his battery was dead. He didn't say it casually. He didn't act suspicious. He just reached for it, the way people do when there's nothing to hide. My heart dropped into my stomach so fast, I thought I might pass out. I handed him the phone, trying to keep my face calm. Inside, I was screaming. I watched him scroll, watched his thumb pause, watched him laugh at something unrelated. Every second felt like a minute. When he handed it back and said, "Thanks," I went to the bathroom and locked the door, shaking. That should have been the moment I stopped. Instead, it became proof that I could survive almost anything. After that, the fear changed into a strange thrill. I hated that about myself. The danger made everything sharper. Every lie felt more powerful. Every secret felt heavier, but also more alive. I started to believe I was smarter than consequences. I wasn't just lying to my partner anymore. I was lying to myself. The emotional distance between us grew, even though nothing obvious changed. We still shared meals, we still slept in the same bed. We still said, I love you. But those words started to feel hollow in my mouth. They were habits now, not feelings. The person I became outside the relationship started to feel more real than the person inside it. There were nights when I would come home late, heart still racing, body still buzzing from someone else's attention. My partner would be on the couch half asleep, waiting for me. He never asked questions. He just smiled and asked if I was tired. That kindness cut deeper than any accusation. Sometimes I wondered if he knew and just didn't want to face it. Other times I realized the truth was worse. He trusted me so completely that the idea of betrayal never even crossed his mind. That trust became something I carried like a weight. The person I grew closest to outside my relationship started to notice cracks. They asked questions I avoided. They wanted more time, more clarity, more honesty. I told them I wasn't ready. I told them things were complicated. I told them what they wanted to hear without actually giving them anything real. I was using them the same way I was using my partner, as emotional support without responsibility. At some point, the lines crossed in ways I couldn't ignore. I missed my partner's call because I was with someone else. I lied about where I was so quickly that it scared me. The words came out smooth, practiced, effortless. That's when I realized something had changed inside me permanently. I stopped feeling like a good person who was doing bad things. I started feeling like someone who didn't know what good even meant anymore. Morals felt flexible. Boundaries felt optional. Everything existed in shades of gray that benefited me. I told myself I was still kind, still loving, still loyal in my own way. But deep down, I knew loyalty didn't work like that. There were moments of clarity that hit without warning. One afternoon, my partner surprised me with something small, a favorite snack, a note that said he was proud of me. I smiled, thanked him, hugged him. Then I went into the bedroom and cried quietly. Not because I loved him so much, but because I didn't know how to stop hurting him. I considered ending the relationship. Not to be honest, but to escape. I thought about breaking up without explaining, starting fresh, pretending the past didn't exist. But the idea of being alone scared me more than living a lie. So I stayed. The pressure built slowly, like water behind a dam. The lies piled up. The stories became harder to track. I caught myself checking details, rehearsing explanations, making sure timelines matched. I was exhausted from managing my own life. And yet, when I had a chance to stop, I didn't take it. The biggest mistake came when I stopped fearing exposure and started believing exposure wouldn't matter. I told myself that if the truth ever came out, I'd find a way to explain it. That people make mistakes. That love forgives. I forgot that forgiveness requires honesty. By the end of this part of my life, I was living on edge without realizing it. Every sound made me alert. Every unexpected question made my chest tighten. I was always preparing for impact, even while pretending everything was fine. I didn't know yet how close I was to losing everything. I thought the danger was being caught. I didn't realize the real danger was what I had already become. The breaking point didn't arrive with shouting or accusations. It arrived quietly, which somehow made it worse. One ordinary morning, my partner looked at me longer than usual. Not suspicious, not angry, just thoughtful. Then he asked a simple question that I still hear in my head sometimes. Are you happy with me? The question caught me off guard. I laughed it off at first, told him of course I was, asked why he'd even asked that. He shrugged and said he didn't know. He said he just felt something was different. Not wrong, just different. I told him he was overthinking. I told him life gets busy. I told him relationships go through phases. Every answer sounded reasonable, even to me. He nodded and accepted it. He always did, but that question stayed with me. It followed me everywhere. Every time I cheated after that, I heard his voice asking it again. And instead of stopping, I started avoiding him emotionally. If I didn't feel too close, maybe I wouldn't feel so guilty. That distance didn't go unnoticed. He became quieter, not colder, just softer, like someone trying not to disturb something fragile. He stopped asking deep questions, stopped planning too far ahead. I noticed the change but pretended I didn't. Facing it would mean facing myself. Around this time, the outside world started pushing back. The people I was seeing weren't satisfied with fragments anymore. They wanted clarity. They wanted me to choose. I felt cornered from both sides, and instead of making a decision, I kept lying. One night, I messed up badly. I was tired, distracted, careless. I sent a message to the wrong person. It wasn't explicit, but it crossed a line. When I realized what I'd done, my whole body went cold. I deleted it immediately, but the damage was already done. My partner saw the notification before I could explain. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just asked who it was. I gave him a name. I gave him a story. I watched his face carefully, waiting for doubt. It never came. He believed me again. That was the moment I broke. Not because I got caught, but because I didn't. I realized then that I could probably cheat forever and never be exposed. And instead of relief, I felt sick. I felt trapped by my own success. There was no dramatic ending coming to save me. No moment where everything would explode and force change. If something ended, it would have to be because I chose to end it. That responsibility terrified me. I started having trouble sleeping. Not because of fear of being caught, but because my thoughts wouldn't slow down. I replayed moments, lies, faces. I wondered which version of me was real. The person who loved her partner, or the person who couldn't stop betraying him. Some days, I promised myself I'd stop. Other days, I didn't even bother pretending. I told myself I was broken in a way that couldn't be fixed. That this was just who I was. The scariest part was how normal everything still looked. Friends saw us as stable. Family trusted us. People talked about us like we were solid. No one knew the truth lived quietly underneath all of it. My partner started talking about the future again. Bigger plans, long-term commitments, things that require honesty at their core. Every time he did, my chest tightened. I nodded and smiled, feeling like I was agreeing to something I had no right to promise. I tried to pull away gently. Less affection, less intimacy. I hoped he'd lose interest or get tired of me. He didn't. He leaned in closer instead, trying to fix something he didn't understand was already broken. That effort made everything worse. One evening, I sat alone in the car after seeing someone else, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding. For the first time, I didn't feel excitement or validation. I felt empty, completely hollow. Whatever I was chasing wasn't there anymore. I realized I wasn't cheating because I wanted something new. I was cheating because I didn't know how to sit with myself. I didn't know how to feel enough without external proof. That night, my partner asked if we could talk, really talk. He said he felt like he was losing me. He said he didn't know why, but he felt it every day. His voice wasn't angry, it was scared. I almost told him everything. The words sat on my tongue. Confession, explanation, truth, all waiting. But when I imagined the look on his face, the way his trust would collapse, I couldn't do it. I chose silence again. I told him I was just overwhelmed, that I needed space. He nodded slowly, trying to understand. He didn't push. He never pushed. And that's how I knew this couldn't last much longer, because I had reached a point where the lies were no longer protecting me. They were protecting my comfort at the cost of someone else's reality. I was standing at the edge of something final, and whether I stepped back or fell forward, nothing would ever be the same. I thought the ending would be dramatic. I thought there would be shouting, tears, maybe a moment where everything finally made sense. But the truth didn't come out like that. It came out slowly, painfully, in a way that felt worse than any explosion. A few days after our last conversation, my partner asked me again if we could talk. This time, he didn't sound scared. He sounded tired. That scared me more than anything else. We sat across from each other, the same place where we had laughed, planned, and promised things. He didn't accuse me of cheating. He didn't say he knew anything for sure. He just said he felt like he had been living with someone who wasn't fully there. He asked me one question. Is there something about you I don't know? That was it. No anger, no raised voice, just honesty. For a moment, I considered lying again. The words were ready, like they always were. But something inside me finally stopped fighting. I realized that if I lied this time, I would never stop. I would carry this version of myself forever. So I told him. Not all at once, not in perfect order. I told him in broken sentences, pauses, long silences. I told him I had cheated. I told him it wasn't just once. I told him I didn't even know how many times anymore. I didn't blame him. I didn't excuse myself. I just told the truth the way it existed. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask questions right away. He just sat there, listening, like someone trying to understand a language they had never heard before. When I finished, the room felt empty, like the air had been pulled out of it. The look on his face is something I will never forget. It wasn't rage. It wasn't hatred. It was grief. The kind that settles slowly, quietly, and changes everything it touches. He asked me why. That was the hardest part, because I didn't have a clean answer. I told him the truth as best I could, that I felt empty, that I needed validation, that I didn't know how to feel whole on my own, that none of it was his fault. He nodded, but I could tell it didn't help. Reasons don't undo damage. Explanations don't rebuild trust. He asked if I loved him. I said yes. He asked if I had loved him while cheating. I couldn't answer. That silence was the final truth. We didn't decide anything that night. There was no clear ending, no closure. He said he needed time. I said I understood. For the first time in a long time, I actually did. The days that followed were quiet and heavy. We lived in the same space but felt like strangers. Every movement felt careful. Every word felt loaded. I could see him replaying memories in his head, questioning moments that used to feel safe. I wanted to comfort him. I wanted to fix it. But I had to accept that I wasn't the person who could do that anymore. Eventually, he told me he couldn't stay. Not because he hated me, but because he didn't recognize his life anymore. He said trust wasn't something he could force himself to feel again. Hearing that hurt, but I respected it. When he left, the silence was louder than anything I had ever experienced. I thought I would feel free. I thought I would feel relief. Instead, I felt exposed. All the distractions were gone. No more secrets, no more hiding. Just me and the version of myself I had avoided for years. For the first time, I had to sit with the emptiness instead of running from it. I realized something uncomfortable. Cheating hadn't filled the void inside me. It had only delayed facing it. Every outside connection was a temporary distraction from the fact that I didn't know how to value myself without someone else wanting me. Losing my partner didn't feel like punishment. It felt like consequence. And there's a difference. Punishment feels unfair. Consequence feels earned. I don't tell this story to excuse what I did. I tell it because cheating doesn't always come from hate or boredom. Sometimes it comes from a broken relationship with yourself. And if that part isn't addressed, no partner will ever be enough. I still think about him. I still think about the life we could have had if I had chosen honesty earlier. That thought doesn't destroy me anymore, but it stays with me. A reminder of what trust looks like when it's gone. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Secrets don't disappear just because no one knows them. They live inside you. They shape your choices. And eventually, they decide the ending for you. I cheated more times than I can count. And in the end, the thing I lost wasn't just my partner. It was the version of myself I could have been if I had stopped sooner. If you find this story good, please like and subscribe our channel. It's free for you, but helps us a lot to keep sharing real stories like this.